You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. 99. 9 times 9 ends the count and Mara's all destroyed. The work of 3 times 3 one done, the Tao reverts to its root. We shall not speak of the 8 Vajra guardians escorting the Tang monk back to his nation. We turn instead to those guardians of the 5 quarters, the 4 sentinels, the 6 gods of darkness, and the 6 gods of light, and the guardians of monasteries, who appeared before the triple gates, and said to the Bodhisattva Guanyin, your disciples had received the Bodhisattva's Dharma decree to give secret protection to the sage monk. Now that the work of the sage monk is completed, and the Bodhisattva has returned the Buddhist patriarch's golden decree to him, we too request permission from the Bodhisattva to return your Dharma decree to you. Highly pleased also, the Bodhisattva said, yes, yes. You have my permission. Then she asked, what was the disposition of the 4 pilgrims during their journey? They showed genuine devotion and determination, replied the various deities, which could hardly have escaped the penetrating observation of the Bodhisattva. The Tang monk, after all, had endured unspeakable sufferings. Indeed, all the ordeals that he had to undergo throughout his journey have been recorded by your disciples. Here is the complete account. The Bodhisattva started to read the registry from its beginning, and this was the content. The guardians in obedience to your decree. Record with care the Tang monk's calamities. Gold cicada banished is the first ordeal, see chapter 8, 2. Being almost killed after birth is the second ordeal, chapter 9. Being thrown in the river hardly a month old is the third ordeal, chapter 9. Seeking parents and their vengeance is the fourth ordeal, chapter 9. Meeting a tiger after leaving the city is the fifth ordeal, chapter 13. Falling into a pit and losing followers is the sixth ordeal, chapter 13. The double fork ridge is the seventh ordeal, chapter 13. The mountain of 2 frontiers is the 8th ordeal, chapter 13. Changing horse at a steep brook is the 9th ordeal, chapter 15. Burning by fire at night is the 10th ordeal, chapter 16. Losing the cassock is the 11th ordeal, chapter 16. Bringing 8 rules to submission is the 12th ordeal, chaps 18 to 19. Being blocked by the yellow-wind fiend is the 13th ordeal, chapter 20. Seeking aid with Lingji is the 14th ordeal, chapter 21. Hard to cross flowing sand is the 15th ordeal, chapter 22. Taking in Sha monk is the 16th ordeal, chapter 22. The 4 sages' epiphany is the 17th ordeal, chapter 23. The 5 villages temple is the 18th ordeal, chapter 24. The ginseng hard to revive is the 19th ordeal, chapter 26. Banishing the mind monkey is the 20th ordeal, chapter 27. Getting lost at Black Pine Forest is the 21st ordeal, chapter 28. Sending a letter to Precious Image Kingdom is the 22nd ordeal, chapter 29. Changing into a tiger at the Golden Chimes Hall is the 23rd ordeal, chapter 30. Meeting demons at Leveltop Mountain is the 24th ordeal, chapter 32. Being hung high at Lotus Flower Cave is the 25th ordeal, chapter 33. Saving the ruler of Black Rooster Kingdom is the 26th ordeal, chapter 37. Running into a demon's transformed body is the 27th ordeal, chapter 37. Meeting a fiend in Roaring Mountain is the 28th ordeal, chapter 40. The sage monk abducted by wind is the 29th ordeal, chapter 40. The mind monkey being injured is the 30th ordeal, chapter 41. Asking the sage to subdue monsters is the 31st ordeal, chapter 42. Sinking in the Black River is the 32nd ordeal, chapter 43. Hauling at Cart Slow Kingdom is the 33rd ordeal, chapter 44. A mighty contest is the 34th ordeal, chaps 45 to 46. Expelling Taoists to prosper Buddhists is the 35th ordeal, chapter 47. Meeting a great water on the road is the 36th ordeal, chapter 47. Falling into the heaven-reaching river is the 37th ordeal, chapter 48. The fish basket revealing her body is the 38th ordeal, chapter 49. Meeting a fiend at Golden Helmet Mountain is the 39th ordeal, chapter 50. Heaven's gods find it hard to win is the 40th ordeal, chaps 51 to 52. Asking the Buddha for the source is the 41st ordeal, chapter 52. Being poisoned after drinking water is the 42nd ordeal, chapter 53. Detained for marriage at Western Liang Kingdom is the 43rd ordeal, chapter 54. Suffering at the Cave of the Lute is the 44th ordeal, chapter 55. Banishing again the mind monkey is the 45th ordeal, chapter 56. The macaque hard to distinguish is the 46th ordeal, chaps 57 to 58. The road blocked at the Mountain of Flames is the 47th ordeal, chapter 59. Seeking the palm leaf fan is the 48th ordeal, chaps 59 to 60. Binding the Demon King is the 49th ordeal, chapter 61. Sweeping the pagoda at Sacrifice Kingdom is the 50th ordeal, chapter 62. Recovering the treasure to save the monks is the 51st ordeal, chapter 63. Chanting poetry at the brambled forest is the 52nd ordeal, chapter 64. Meeting disaster at Little Thunderclap is the 53rd ordeal, chapter 65. The celestial gods being imprisoned is the 54th ordeal, chapter 66. Being blocked by filth at Pulpy Persimmon Alley is the 55th ordeal, chapter 67. Applying medication at the Scarlet Purple Kingdom is the 56th ordeal, chaps 68 to 69. Healing fatigue and infirmity is the 57th ordeal, chaps 68 to 69. Subduing monster to recover a queen is the 58th ordeal, chaps 69 to 71. Delusion by the seven passions is the 59th ordeal, chapter 72. Being wounded by many eyes is the 60th ordeal, chapter 73. The way blocked at the Lion Camel Kingdom is the 61st ordeal, chaps 74 to 75. The fiends divided into three colors is the 62nd ordeal, chaps 74 to 77. Meeting calamity in the city is the 63rd ordeal, chaps 76 to 77. Requesting Buddha to subdue the demons is the 64th ordeal, chapter 77. Rescuing the lads at Bhikkhu is the 65th ordeal, chapter 78. Distinguishing the true from the deviate is the 66th ordeal, chapter 79. Saving a fiend at a pine forest is the 67th ordeal, chapter 80. Falling sick in a priestly chamber is the 68th ordeal, chapter 81. Being imprisoned at the bottomless cave is the 69th ordeal, chaps 81 to 83. Difficulty in going through Dharma-destroying kingdom is the 70th ordeal, chapter 84. Meeting demons at mist-concealing mountain is the 71st ordeal, chaps 85 to 86. Seeking rain at Phoenix Immortal Prefecture is the 72nd ordeal, chapter 87. Losing their weapons is the 73rd ordeal, chapter 88. The Festival of the Rake is the 74th ordeal, chapter 89. Meeting disaster at Bamboo Knot Mountain is the 75th ordeal, chapter 90. Suffering at Mysterious Flower Cave is the 76th ordeal, chapter 91. Capturing the rhinoceroses is the 77th ordeal, chapter 92. Being forced to marry at India is the 78th ordeal, chaps 93 to 95. Jailed at Bronze Estrade Prefecture is the 79th ordeal, chapter 97. Delivered of mortal stock at Cloud Transcending Ferry is the 80th ordeal, chapter 98. The journey, 108,000 miles. The sage monk's ordeals are clearly on file. After the Bodhisattva had read through the entire registry of ordeals, she said hurriedly, "Within our gate of Buddhism, 9 times 9 is the crucial means by which one returns to perfection. The sage monk has undergone 80 ordeals. Because one ordeal, therefore, is still lacking, the sacred number is not yet complete." At once she gave this order to one of the guardians: "Catch the Vajra guardians and create one more ordeal." Having received this command, the guardian soared toward the east astride the clouds. After a night and a day he caught the Vajra guardians and whispered in their ears, "Do this and this. Don't fail to obey the Dharma decree of the Bodhisattva." On hearing these words, the 8 Vajra guardians immediately retrieved the wind that had borne aloft the 4 pilgrims, dropping them, and the horse bearing the scriptures to the ground. Alas! Truly such is 9 times 9, hard task of immortality. Firmness of will yields the mysterious key. By bitter toil you must the demons spurn. Cultivation will the proper way return. Regard not the scriptures as easy things. So many are the sage monk's sufferings. Learn of the old, wondrous kinship of the three. Elixir won't gel if there's slight errancy. When his feet touched profane ground, Tripitaka became terribly frightened. 8 Rules, however, roared with laughter, saying, "Good. Good. Good. This is exactly a case of more haste, less speed." "Good. Good. Good," said Sha Monk. "Because we've speeded up too much, they want us to take a little rest here." "Have no worry," said the great sage. As the proverb says, "For 10 days you sit on the shore. In one day you may pass 9 beaches." "Stop matching your wits, you 3, said Tripitaka. "Let's see if we can tell where we are." Looking all around, Sha Monk said, "I know the place. I know the place. Master, listen to the sound of water." Pilgrim said, "The sound of water, I suppose, reminds you of your ancestral home." "Which is the flowing sand river," said 8 Rules. "No. No," said Sha Monk. "This happens to be the heaven-reaching river." Tripitaka said, "O disciples, take a careful look and see which side of the river we're on." Vaulting into the air, Pilgrim shielded his eyes with his hand, and took a careful survey of the place before dropping down once more. "Master," he said, "this is the west bank of the heaven-reaching river." "Now I remember," said Tripitaka. "There was a Chin village on the east bank. When we arrived here that year, you rescued their son and daughter. In their gratitude to us, they wanted to make a boat to take us across. Eventually we were fortunate enough to get across on the back of a white turtle. I recall, too, that there was no human habitation whatever on the west bank. What shall we do this time?" "I thought that only profane people would practice this sort of fraud," said 8 Rules. "Now I know that even the Vajra guardians before the face of Buddha can practice fraud. Buddha commanded them to take us back east. How could they just abandon us in mid-journey? Now we're in quite a bind. How are we going to get across?" "Stop grumbling, second elder brother," said Sha Monk. "Our master has already attained the way, for he had already been delivered from his mortal frame previously at the cloud-transcending ferry. This time he can't possibly sink in water. Let's all of us exercise our magic of displacement, and take master across." "You can't take him over. You can't take him over," said Pilgrim, chuckling to himself. Now, why did he say that? If he were willing to exercise his magic powers and reveal the mystery of flight, master and disciples could cross even 1,000 rivers. He knew, however, that the Tang monk had not yet perfected the sacred number of 9 times 9. That one remaining ordeal made it necessary for them to be detained at the spot. As master and disciples conversed and walked slowly up to the edge of the water, they suddenly heard someone calling, "Tang Sage Monk! Tang Sage Monk! Come this way! Come this way!" Startled, the 4 of them looked all around, but could not see any sign of a human being or a boat. Then they caught sight of a huge, white, scabby-headed turtle at the shoreline. Old master, he cried with outstretched neck, I have waited for you for so many years. Have you returned only at this time? Old turtle, replied Pilgrim, smiling, we troubled you in a year past, and today we meet again. Tripitaka, 8 rules, and Sha monk could not have been more pleased. If indeed you want to serve us, said Pilgrim, come up on the shore. The turtle crawled up the bank. Pilgrim told his companions to guide the horse onto the turtle's back. As before, 8 rules squatted at the rear of the horse, while the Tang monk and Sha monk took up positions to the left and to the right of the horse. With one foot on the turtle's head and another on his neck, Pilgrim said, Old turtle, go steadily. His 4 legs outstretched, the old turtle moved through the water, as if he were on dry level ground, carrying all 5 of them, master, disciples, and the horse, straight toward the eastern shore. Thus it is that in Advaya's 5 gate will Dharma profound reveal heaven and earth and demons confound. The original visage now they see. Causes find perfection in one body. Freely they move when Trayana's won. And when the elixir's 9 turns are done. The luggage and the staff there's no need to tote. Glad to return on old turtle afloat. Carrying the pilgrims on his back, the old turtle trod on the waves and proceeded for more than half a day. Late in the afternoon they were near the eastern shore when he suddenly asked this question, Old master, in that year when I took you across, I begged you to question Tathagata, once you got to see him, when I would find my sought-after refuge, and how much longer would I live. Did you do that? Now that elder, since his arrival at the western heaven, had been preoccupied with bathing in the Jade Perfection Abbey, being renewed at cloud-transcending ferry, and bowing to the various sage monks, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. When he walked up the Spirit Mountain, he fixed his thought on the worship of Buddha, and on the acquisition of scriptures, completely banishing from his mind all other concerns. He did not, of course, ask about the allotted age of the old turtle. Not daring to lie, however, he fell silent, and did not answer the question for a long time. Perceiving that Tripitaka had not asked the Buddha for him, the old turtle shook his body once and dove with a splash into the depths. The 4 pilgrims, the horse, and the scriptures all fell into the water as well. Ah! It was fortunate that the Tang monk had cast off his mortal frame and attained the way. If he were like the person he had been before, he would have sunk straight to the bottom. The white horse, moreover, was originally a dragon, while 8 rules and Sha monk both were quite at home in the water. Smiling broadly, Pilgrim made a great display of his magic powers by hauling the Tang monk right out of the water and onto the eastern shore. But the scriptures, the clothing, and the saddle were completely soaked. Master and disciples had just climbed up the riverbank when suddenly a violent gale arose, the sky darkened immediately, and both thunder and lightning began as rocks and grit flew everywhere. What they felt was one gust of wind, and the whole world teetered. One clap of thunder, and both mountains and streams shuddered. One flash of lightning shot flames through the clouds. One sky of fog enveloped this great earth. The wind's mighty howl, the thunder's violent roar, the lightning's scarlet streaks, the fog blanking moon and stars. The wind hurled dust and dirt at their faces. The thunder sent tigers and leopards into hiding. The lightning raised among the fowl a ruckus. The fog made the woods and trees disappear. That wind caused waves in the heaven-reaching river to toss and churn. That lightning lit up the heaven-reaching river down to its bottom. That thunder terrified the heaven-reaching river's dragons and fishes. That fog covered the shores of heaven-reaching river with a shroud of darkness. Marvelous wind. Mountains cracked as pines and bamboos toppled. Marvelous thunder. Its power stirred insects and injured humans. Marvelous lightning. Like a gold snake it brightened both land and sky. Marvelous fog. It surged through the air to screen the ninefold heaven. So terrified were the pilgrims that Tripitaka held firmly to the scripture wraps, and Sha Monk threw himself on the poles. While 8 Rules clung to the white horse, Pilgrim wielded his iron rod with both hands to give protection left and right. That wind, fog, thunder, and lightning, you see, had been a storm brought on by invisible demons, who wanted to snatch away the scriptures the pilgrims had acquired. The commotion lasted all night, and only by morning did the storm subside. Soaked from top to bottom and shaking all over, the elder said, "Wu Kong, how did this storm come about?" "Master, you don't seem to understand," said Pilgrim, panting heavily, "that when we escorted you to acquire these scriptures, we had, in fact, robbed heaven and earth of their creative powers. For our success meant that we could share the age of the universe, like the light of the sun and moon, we would enjoy life everlasting, for we had put on an incorruptible body. Our success, however, had also incurred the envy of heaven and earth, the jealousy of both demons and gods, who wanted to snatch away the scriptures from us. They could not do so only because the scriptures were thoroughly wet, and because they had been shielded by your rectified Dharma body, which could not be harmed by thunder, lightning, or fog. Moreover, Old Monkey was brandishing his iron rod to exercise the nature of pure Yang, and give you protection. Now that it is morning, the forces of Yang are ever more in ascendancy, and the demons cannot prevail." Only then did Tripitaka, 8 Rules, and Sha Monk realize what had taken place, and they all thanked Pilgrim repeatedly. In a little while, the sun was way up in the sky, and they moved the scriptures to high ground so that the wraps could be opened and their contents dried. To this day the boulders have remained on which the scriptures were spread out and sunned. By the side of the boulders they also spread out their own clothing and shoes. As they stood, sat, or jumped about, truly this was their situation. The one pure Yang body facing the light has put invisible demons all to flight. Know that true scriptures will o'er water prevail. They fear not the thunder and lightning assail. Henceforth to Sambodhi they'll go in peace, and to fairyland they'll return with ease. Rocks for sunning scriptures are still found here, though no demon would ever dare come near. The 4 of them were examining the scriptures scroll by scroll to see if they had completely dried, when some fishermen arrived at the shore. When they saw the pilgrims, one of the fishermen recognized them and said, "Old masters, aren't you the ones who crossed this river some years ago on your way to the western heaven to seek scriptures?" "Indeed, we are," replied 8 Rules. "Where are you from? How is it that you recognize us?" "We are from the Chin village," said the fisherman. "How far is the village from here?" asked 8 Rules. The fisherman said, "Due south of this canal, about 20 miles. "Master," said 8 Rules, "let's move the scriptures to the Chin village and dry them there. They have a place for us to sit and food for us to eat. We can even ask their family to starch our clothing. Isn't that better than staying here?" "Let's not go there," replied Tripitaka. "As soon as the scriptures are dried here, we can collect them and be on our way." The fishermen, however, went back south of the canal and ran right into Chincheng. "Number 2, they cried, "the masters who offered themselves as sacrifice substitutes for your children years ago have returned." "Where did you see them?" asked Chincheng. Pointing with their hands, the fishermen said, "Near the boulders over there, where they're sunning scrolls of scriptures." Chincheng took some of his farmhands and ran past the canal. When he caught sight of the pilgrims, he hurriedly went to his knees and said, "Venerable fathers, now that you have returned, having accomplished your work and merit of acquiring scriptures, why did you not come straight to our home? Why are you loitering here instead? Please come to our home." "Wait till we've dried the scriptures in the sun," said Pilgrim, "and we'll go with you." "How is it," asked Chincheng again, "that the clothing and scriptures of the venerable fathers are soaking wet?" "In that previous year," replied Tripitaka, "we were indebted to a white turtle for taking us on his back to the western shore. This time he again offered to carry us back to the eastern shore. When we were about to reach the bank, he asked me whether I had remembered to inquire of Buddha for him about how much longer it would take for him to achieve human form. I had actually forgotten about the matter, and he dove into the water. That was how we got wet. After Tripitaka had thus given a thorough account of what had taken place, Cheng'en kowtowed and urged them to go back to the house. At length Tripitaka gave in, and they began to collect the scriptures together. They did not expect, however, that several scrolls of the Buddhacharita Kavya Sutra would be stuck to the rocks, and a part of the sutra's ending was torn off. This is why the sutra today is not a complete text, and the top of that particular boulder on which the sutra had dried still retains some traces of writing. "We've been very careless," said Tripitaka sorrowfully. "We should have been more vigilant." "Hardly. Hardly," said Pilgrim, laughing. "After all, even heaven and earth are not perfect. This sutra may have been perfect, but a part of it has been torn off precisely because only in that condition will it correspond to the profound mystery of non-perfection. What happened isn't something human power could anticipate or change." After master and disciples had finished packing up the scriptures, they headed for the village with Cheng'en. The news of the pilgrims' arrival was passed from one person to 10, from 10 to 100, and from 100 to 1,000, till all the people, old and young, came to receive them. When Cheng'en got the news, he immediately set up an incense altar in front of his door, and called for drummers and musicians to play. The moment they arrived, Chen led his entire household to kowtow to the pilgrims, so as to thank them once more for their previous kindness of saving their children. Then he ordered tea and mager for them. Since Tripitaka had partaken of the immortal victuals prepared for him by the Buddhist patriarch, and since he had been delivered from his mortal frame to become a Buddha, he had no desire at all for profane food. The two old men begged, and only to please them did he pick up the merest morsel. The great sage Sun, who never ate much cooked food anyway, said almost immediately, "Enough." Sha Monk did not show much appetite either. As for 8 Rules, even he did not resemble his former self, for he soon put down his bowl. "Idiot, aren't you eating any more?" asked Pilgrim. "I don't know why," said 8 Rules, "but my stomach seems to have weakened all at once." They therefore put away the food, and the two old men asked about the enterprise of scripture seeking. Tripitaka gave a thorough account of how they bathed at the Jade Perfection Abbey first, how their bodies turned light and agile at the cloud-transcending ferry, how they bowed to Tathagata at Thunderclap, and how they were fated beneath the precious tower, and received scriptures at the treasure loft. He then went on to tell how the two honored ones, failing to obtain a gift at first, gave them wordless scriptures instead, how the second audience with Tathagata had resulted in acquiring a canonical sum of scriptures, how the white turtle dove into the water, and how invisible demons tried to rob them. After this detailed rehearsal, he immediately wanted to leave. The entire household of the two old men, of course, absolutely refused to let them go. "We could never have repaid," they said, "your profound kindness in saving the lives of our son and daughter except by building a temple to your memory. We have named it the life-saving monastery, so that we might offer you the perpetual sacrifice of incense." Then they called Chen Guanbao and 1 load of gold, the son and daughter for whom Pilgrim and 8 Rules originally served as substitutes on that occasion of child sacrifice, to come out to kowtow again to their benefactors before they invited the pilgrims to view the monastery. Leaving the scripture wraps in front of their family hall, Tripitaka recited a scroll of the precious Permanence Sutra for their entire household. When they reached the monastery, food had already been laid out there by the Chen family. Hardly had they been seated than another banquet was sent in by another family. Before they could even raise their chopsticks, still another banquet was brought in. There seemed, in fact, to be an unending stream of visitors and food vying for the pilgrims' attention. Not wishing to decline such sincere display of the people's hospitality, Tripitaka forced himself to make some show of tasting what was set before him. That monastery, by the way, was a handsome building indeed. The temple's bright red painted doors reflect the work of all donors. From that moment one edifice would rise, with 2 porticos adding to its size. Screens and casements scarlet. 7 treasures exquisite. Incense and clouds interlace, as pure light floods the airy space. A few young cypresses need water still. Pines have yet to form clusters on the hill. A living stream in front reaches heaven with its tossing billows. A tall ridge behind. The mountain range through which the earth pulse flows. After he had looked at the monastery from the outside, Tripitaka then went up to the tall tower, where he found the 4 statues of himself and his disciples. When 8 Rules saw these, he gave Pilgrim a tug and said, "Your statue looks very much like you." "Second elder brother," said Sha Monk, "yours has great resemblance too. But Master's seems to look even more handsome." "It's about right." "It's about right," said Tripitaka, and they descended the tower. In the front hall and the rear corridor, more vegetarian dishes were laid out for them. Pilgrim asked the Chens, whatever happened to the shrine of that great king. "It was pulled down that very year," replied the 2 old men. "Since this monastery was built, Venerable Father, we have been enjoying a rich harvest every year. This has to be the blessing you bestowed on us." "It's actually the gift of heaven," said Pilgrim, chuckling. "We have nothing to do with it. But after we leave this time, we shall try to give you all the protection we can, so that the families of your entire village may enjoy abundant posterity, the peaceful births of the 6 beasts, and annually wind and rain in due season." All the people kowtowed again to express their thanks. Before and behind the monastery, there seemed to have gathered a numberless crowd, all wanting to offer fruits and mager to their benefactors. With a giggle 8 Rules said, "It's just my lousy luck. At the time when I could eat, there wasn't a single household that would give me 10 meals. Today I have no appetite, but one family after another is pressing me with invitations." Though he felt stuffed, he raised his hands slightly and once more devoured 8 or 9 platters of vegetarian food. Though he claimed his stomach had weakened, he nonetheless put away 20 or 30 buns. The pilgrims all ate to their fullest capacity, but still there were other households waiting to invite them. "What contribution have these disciples made," said Tripitaka, "that we should receive such great outpouring of your affection? I beg you all to call a halt tonight. Wait till tomorrow, and we shall be glad to be the recipients again." It was already deep in the night. As he wanted to guard the true scriptures, Tripitaka dared not leave. He remained seated below the tower and meditated, so as to watch his possessions. By about the hour of the 3rd watch, Tripitaka whispered, "Wukong, the people here have already perceived that we have finished our enterprise and attained the way. As the ancients put it, the adept does not show himself. He who shows himself's no adept. If they detain us too long, I fear that we may lose out in our main enterprise." "What you say is quite right, Master," replied Pilgrim. "While it is still deep in the night and people are all sound asleep, let us leave quietly." 8 Rules now had become quite alert, and Sha Monk was most understanding. Even the white horse seemed to know their thoughts. They all arose, silently loaded the packs on the saddle, took up the poles, and toted their belongings through the corridor. When they reached the monastery gate, they found it padlocked. Using his magic, Pilgrim opened the locks on both the second-level gate and the main gate. As they were searching for the way toward the east, a voice rang out in midair. "You who are fleeing," cried the 8 Vidra guardians, "follow us." As the elder smelled a strange fragrance, he rose with the others into the wind. Truly, elixir formed, he knows the original face. 6. His healthy frame, natural and free, bows to his lord. We do not know how he finally managed to see the Tang Emperor. Let's listen to the explanation in the next chapter. You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you.